the big chasm of space between a crowdfunding platform and a big board stock exchange. So I'm not a competitor to a crowdfunding platform, and I'm not a competitor to a big board stock exchange. I literally fill that big chasm in between. And the reason why I framed up the Startup Stock Exchange and now Allied Stock Exchange becoming an alliance in 50 countries is because it does fill that gap. The Startup Stock Exchange couldn't really be globalized. It's not possible today to globalize a stock exchange. There are things in the way, there are regulatory issues in the way, such as KYC, know your client, AML, anti-money laundering processes. Those things are extremely individual to locations. The AML and KYC process here in Dubai will be categorically different than it is in Singapore, for example. The information you have to provide, the way that information is provided, the way it's reported will all be different. So we can't create a platform that covers all of those differentiators. And also, I think companies want to go local. So we went local to go global by launching 50 exchanges in 50 countries. That creates a big dynamic. Someone said earlier in one of the presentations, today you need to think big. Well, I think that's thinking pretty big. I'm thinking pretty big to think, let's take this established stock exchange that I've had running for 5 years, that's in a regulated environment with 960 companies listed and 38,000 investors. Let's scale it. But I can't scale it where it's located. I can't make it actually any bigger where it's located. So I have to go global. But to go global, I need to go local because of those KYC AML problems, but also because of a perception. If you're a Dubai company or a UAE company, you don't want to list on a Dutch stock exchange. You want to list on a stock exchange that's close to you, and you want to list on one that's fit for purpose. So I guess the big message today is that for me to get across to you guys is my exchange is fit for purpose for early stage companies. It's not a big board exchange. You can't trade any derivative on my exchange. You can't do anything other than buy a security or sell a security. And as an investor, get an unprecedented amount of information. As an investor on the exchange, you'll get information such as how many NDAs they've signed if they're hiring a non-exec director, if they've got an institution interested in them 2 years in advance of hitting a benchmark. You'll get those kind of bits of data as an investor. And so when that company leaves to be a big board stock exchange or another form of exit strategy, it'll be the better type of company because it's been through a specific and focused university. So exit strategies are important, but exit strategies are very much down the line for a company. But they do need to layer them in. The whole point of the capital superhighway is layer in an exit strategy, layer in your next level of finance, layer in some liquidity, but do it now. Think about it ahead of time. Am I going backwards again? Yes. So in my partnership now with my new friends here, and I feel like I'm getting 2 in 1 because it's a very India and UAE event. We take a timeline to launch an exchange, and so we look at a 4-month process. And a 4-month process would, and I won't bore you with going through all these, I'm gonna literally flip through them quickly. But we have to assess initial data. So who's in the environment? Who's here? Who's active? Is there any crowdfunding activity? Who are the brokerage firms? Who are the lawyers, the accountants, the business agents, the consultants? We need to database those people so that we inform them that this exchange is coming and it's going to affect the dynamic of the entire SME market, because that is what it's going to do. We start onboarding mapping. We start connections, APIs to other organizations that might require access, for example, listing agents. This exchange creates an ecosystem that everyone can make money out of it, and that's one of the reasons why it's successful. An exchange needs listing agents. Listing agents can charge a fee. Those earnings in the peripheral businesses around the exchange are as good as the end result it creates for the local economy. We have our own private equity card, so we preview that. So you can put money onto your private equity card. You can use that to buy equities on the exchange. We start a quotation process. So I've heard some numbers today of, I can't remember what they are now, but they were big. 56,000, was that the number? 56,000 SMEs in this region, 350 in the wider region. That's an enormous amount of companies. I want to database them and inform them that there's a startup stock exchange fit for purpose for them coming to the region that might be interested if they wanted a listing on it. Now, how does that listing work? We're going to give them what we call a level 1 listing, or a quotation to begin with. It doesn't mean you can trade the security, it means you can see information. So if there were 350 local SMEs, we'd want to database them and we'd want to onboard them ourselves. So it's an automated process. Then you come and claim your page. So now you launch this stock exchange and you mention to the community at large that there's maybe 50,000 SMEs listed on the exchange or quoted on the exchange. They're not tradable on the exchange, they're quoted on the exchange, because we have to frame how this exchange is perceived in the marketplace. It's got to be perceived differently because it is different. So once we've mapped that data, we start to go to the investment community. We let the investment community know that there's a startup stock exchange coming to the region. If you're an investor in this region, if you have any equity in private equity or private stock in companies in the region, you should be thinking about onboarding as an investor, because if the company onboards, we'll be digitizing that security and you can trade it. So they'll want to hear that. They'll want to hear about the barometer. The listing agents will want to know that they can earn money out of this process. We have an agent, we have a non-exec agency. So if a company is an early stage company, they've just come off crowdfunding, they've never built a business before, we feel like one of the things they should do is employ a non-exec director. We have an agency for non-exec directorships. We acquired it. It has 12,000 non-exec directors in the agency, and it's a matching service. The non-exec director is looking for a position in this sector, in this region. The company is looking for a non-exec director with this experience, and we literally match them. It's a free service. Once we finish that, we go into the IPO bidder process. The IPO bidder is the thing I mentioned earlier. When I presented in Norway, the family offices asked me, well, what can we do together? How can we do something with you? Because we're outside your scope today. And I came up with the idea of, well, bid on stocks, even if they're too early for you. They liked it so much, we actually built it. They all signed up. There were 40 family offices in the room, and every single one of them signed up. That tells you something. It's like the warmth I got from you guys today. They all want to do something. They're passionate about SMEs. And because they're passionate about them, they want to take action. It's what I like so much about Sanjit. He takes action. He doesn't just talk. He takes action and he moves. And so the IPO bidder process is very simple. We start databasing all of the local investment funds, all the private equity funds, any big institutional investor group that's made investments in the region, and we ask them to participate. Just give us the information that you're looking, the kind of companies that you're looking to invest in. We put that into one side of the database, and the companies go into the other side of the database. As those companies match up, bids start to come in. As bids start to come in, early stage investors see that late stage investors are interested in this company should they hit their benchmarks. If they hit their benchmarks, that late stage investor comes in. That smooths out the process for a company raising capital. One of the biggest problems today for early stage businesses is they raise their first money and then they have to stop their business while they look for their second money. Now, we don't want to make companies equity dependent, but we also don't want to give them too much money on their first round. So there needs to be confidence built between the first round requirements and the second round need, and the investor not giving too much capital to the company in the first instance. Then we go to chapter reporting and launch. Sorry, I keep doing that the wrong way around. So what is the Capital Superhighway? The Capital Superhighway is a combination of fintech companies that my fund has invested in over the last 4 years. I mentioned a few of them. There's over a dozen of them. I haven't got enough time to go into all of it today. When I first met Sanjit, he grilled me for 2 hours because he wasn't really believing what we had. He grilled me for 2 hours. After that 2 hours of grilling, I came to his office with a big folder of due diligence. He went through that. And over the course of a few days, he realized we have what we say we have, we're doing what we say we're doing, and why he invited me here today. And so I don't have enough time to explain all of that to you, but he put me on this podium to try and explain it to you in a small, narrow piece of time, which I'm doing my best to do. The best way I can explain or I can get across that message to you is go to the website. DubaiSX.com is up. You can go and visit it. You can ask for more information. It will give you more information. If you want to go and trade on one of our trading platforms, you can go to demo.miningsx.com. I'll tell any of you afterwards. And you can open an account. You'll get a free $25,000. It isn't real money, but you'll get a free $25,000, and you can trade within 2 minutes of putting in your name and your email address. You'll be opening an account. You can buy a security and see the kind of reporting that you'll get. I think that does enough for people to see what we're doing, where we are, and what we've got already today. The regulatory control that we've developed is also digitally delivered. So what do I mean when I say, or what does it mean when we say we're running a digitally delivered stock exchange? It doesn't mean it's electronic. All stock exchanges today are electronic. It means it's digitally delivered. Absolutely every single thing that is being done on the exchange is being reported in a bit of data. And that bit of data is being reported to who needs to know it. Sometimes it might be the board of directors need to know it. Another time it might be all the shareholders need to know it. So if you go onto the demo platform, you'll see the kind of bits of data that you get if they've had a non-exec director match, if they've signed an NDA this month. All the aspects that they do on the superhighway get reported. And so the regulatory requirement is soft but harsh because it's digital. You either did it or you didn't. It's a 0 or a 1. And to highlight this, I think the best way to highlight it is an experiment we did with the London Stock Exchange. The London Stock Exchange has a rule called Rule 26. Rule 26 says that every single company on AIM and London Stock Exchange must have 5 items on their website. They must have the board of directors, they must have news announcements, they must have a stock price, they must have the issued and outstanding, and they must have their reporting, so any filings. We just ran our engine onto every single company that was listed on the London Stock Exchange and AIM, and we found 301 companies were in breach of Rule 26. Now, it's not a very serious rule, but it's still a breach of the rules and regulations of the stock exchange. So we informed the London Stock Exchange, we found 301 companies that are in breach of Rule 26. Here's how it would look if you employed our regulatory tool that runs our exchange. Your division would receive a report that says, we found 301 companies that were delinquent of Rule 26. We wrote to them all. We asked them to make sure that that delinquency was corrected within 30 days. If they're not corrected in 30 days, they'll get a £1,000 fine. So in 30 days, there were 20 companies still delinquent. So 20 fines go out of £1,000, and the rest are ticked off as compliant. In another 30 days, they're written to again saying, here's your fine, please correct it in the next 30 days. In the next 30 days, 2 were still delinquent. So you've received $31,000 in fines, you've seen 301 companies that weren't compliant with one rule, and you've got 2 companies that haven't paid attention to their regulator in 60 days. You need to go visit those guys, because there's something more going on. So the first time that the division was informed of that act was when the report comes out 61 days later. 61 days, there's the report of what happened on the exchange. And that's the best way I can frame for you to see how different a digitally delivered stock exchange will deliver information to both the regulator, us in this case, the investor, and the company. It changes the ballpark completely. The way I try and explain it to people, if I'm doing it quickly, is we're playing football, but we're not trying to score goals. This is a whole new ball game. The game is going to be digitally delivered, and whoever passes better, and whoever controls the ball better, and whoever retains possession longer will win the game. Now, it sounds like a boring game of football, but as an analogy, it works. We've started a game of football, but we're not trying to score a goal. That's what I'm trying to deliver in this startup stock exchange. Okay, so this is a snapshot for you of the trading platform. That's what it looks like. This information down here. No, that's not the right one. I'm not very good at this, am I? This information down the side here is the kind of information you'll see on the company. This is the regulatory reporting here. This will tell you everything that we've taken in bits and bytes from the company. And if you want to go more, if you want to visit, if you want to see more, get a documentation on any aspect of of involvement with Dubai SX, then go to the website. And with that, I'll close and say thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'm here on the Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Edward James Fitzpatrick. That was very innovative. It was very clear as how the trading and the whole modus operandi of the model works. Well done, and wish you every success in your venture with the IBMC. Congratulations to both of you. Innocently left out one very important speaker, Mr. Balasubramaniam. Kindly forgive me. India, INX, GIFT, Citi and BSE listed companies, the added support to the Sharjah economy. Mr. V. Balasubramaniam, please come forward to the podium for your presentation. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Apologies once again, Mr. Balasubramaniam, for...
Thank you. Once again, a very good evening to all of you. And let me thank His Highness Mr. Sarkar to actually come and present about Sharjah. In fact, it's an interesting place, interesting city, and we do love it. And let me also thank all my fellow panelists and Sajid for giving us this opportunity. I think some of you might have been there in my last panel where I did touch about quite a few aspects, especially on the international exchange which is coming up in India, in the new special economic zone at GIFT City. So what I will do is I will not spend too much time. I'll probably take 5 minutes to quickly run through this presentation because I think I'm standing between you and dinner. So in some sense, as a last speaker, I think I will rush it a little bit. But I'll be more than happy to take questions if you have any. So in terms of the new International Financial Service Center, this is promoted in Gujarat, which is a state in India, which is about 500 kilometers north of Mumbai. So it's halfway towards Dubai and Sharjah. And effectively, it's the nearest airport is Ahmedabad Airport, which is just about 8 kilometers from this place. And this is a complete integrated township. This is actually one of the model smart cities which has been built. This city has got some amazing features in terms of automated waste management plans with robotic stuff. It has got underground tunnels and a lot of stuff. So it's, in fact, a futuristic kind of a city which is already kind of built out. And what we are doing, we've been doing at the Bombay Stock Exchanges, we created a fully owned subsidiary, which became the first stock exchange to sign up with this SEC in January 2015. And last year in 2016, September, we created two companies called the International Exchange and the International Clearing Corporation. And this was approved by our regulator, Securities and Exchange Board of India, in the end of December 30th. And obviously, we run a very latest platform. And finally, the Prime Minister actually came and inaugurated this exchange and kickstarted it on January 9th. And this is actually the message which he actually gave out in our inauguration ceremony. He said that in 10 years, GIFT City should become the price setter for at least few of the largest traded instruments in the world, whether in commodities, currencies, equities, interest rates, or any other financial instrument. So effectively, the picture is pretty large. Today, Indians, if you go to any international center, or especially financial center, you'll find Indian traders all over the place. And in some sense, we thought that, why don't we use this strength and bring them back to the place where they actually belong to? So interestingly, since I'm here, there are quite a few Indians, and many of you are, as we call it, the non-resident Indians. There is an advantage for you to come and trade in India International Exchange, because when you trade in derivatives in India, you can't repatriate it back, whereas here you will have the advantage of doing a repatriation. What I have done is I have put in a small member directory in terms of the brokers through whom you can access and actually participate. In fact, our website is indiainx.com, and the number of brokers list is continually expanding as I speak. In terms of the value proposition, the best part is that since it's an offshore center, the entry and the ease of entry is extremely high. There is no restrictions as such, and people can just simply transfer foreign currency into the bank accounts there with the brokers and will be able to trade. Secondly, more importantly, there have been a lot of tax incentives which has been given. So effectively, we have learned something out of Sharjah and Dubai in some sense, and that is exactly what we are replicating out here in the GIFT City. And from a regulatory perspective, what we are doing is we are putting in a universal exchange, which means all financial products of all asset class types will all happen in a single platform. So this makes it very easy for people to do business. and we will be open for business for 22 hours as we speak. And so that means it's around the clock access, and people can trade across any markets, any time zone, any of the geographies at all from any geography. From a technology perspective, we always take pride in being a fintech infrastructure as an exchange. And we think that at this point of time, with our technology, which gives a response time of close to about 4 microseconds per transaction. So when you put an order, you will be able to get a response back in 4 microseconds. To just give you a sense, in a second, there are 1,000 milliseconds. And in each millisecond, there are 1,000 microseconds. So effectively, there are 1 million microseconds in a second. And we give you response time in 4 microseconds. So effectively, 250,000 transactions can happen just before even you can blink your eye. That's the kind of a capacity which we process and the speed at which we actually respond. And the best part is that there is no currency risk for people. Nobody needs to actually convert their money into rupee. So effectively, people can use the foreign currency to actually trade out here. In terms of clearing and settlement, obviously, we are benchmarked on the best practices in the world. We are part of CCP 12 and IOSCO, and we all the trades which happen on the exchange are completely guaranteed. So effectively, there is no settlement failure risk which is there. In terms of fund remittance, it's very easy to do SWIFT transfers. And most importantly, we are also going to provide a lot of different kind of nuances in terms of commodity trading, both in terms of quantitative index and so on and so forth, which again is something which is a value proposition for traders who actually participate in commodity markets. And the cost of trading on our exchange is going to be very, very competitive. Also, people can trade as much as they want. The position limits are all very liberal, so people can trade as much as they want. And most importantly, our entire market is available on the website. So effectively, everything is transparent. There is a streamer which is on our website, which will give you real-time prices of every product, which you can drill down and see what's happening on the market. And as I said, the biggest advantage is obviously this place has become very friendly to do business because the cost is very low. We have transaction taxes which don't apply here. And most importantly, people who set up businesses there, they will be able to repatriate the money back as dividend, for which also there are no taxes. Long-term capital gain is waived off. There is a small minimum alternate tax, which is basically 9%, which is all what will be applicable in terms of the cost. There are no local duties in terms of stamp duty, VAT, etc. And there is no service tax also applicable. And the biggest incentive which has been given to players is that there is an income tax holiday which has been given for 15 years in terms of 100% of eligible profits or gain in the first 5 years is fully exempt. And for the next 5 years is 50%. And for the subsequent 5 years, whatever profits are plowed back, they are also exempt. And these are some of the products which we trade. Sensex is obviously the bellwether index, and Sensex 50 is the top 50 stocks in India. Both these index features already are trading. Similarly, we have gold, silver, and copper on the commodity side, which is already trading. We also trade in international stocks, which includes Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, and all that, which gives people an international flavor. And obviously, the top 10 stocks of Indian origin, which also is kind of available in terms of futures and options trading. And since we started this journey in January 2017, I think this is the kind of a graph in terms of the volumes which we are seeing. And last week on Friday, we crossed the 100 million mark in terms of the daily trading volume. So effectively, I think this is a strong story which is kind of building out, and I'll urge people to take a look at it. And as we speak, we are not just sitting on what our products which we have got. We are looking at expanding the basket pretty aggressively. We're looking at adding more and more stocks, also looking at adding currency derivatives on various products, and also a lot of other commodities which is going to come in. So this will actually make us truly competitive with any international exchange in the world. And this is just to give you a glimpse of what the market look like and what is available on the website, so you can actually get the whole transparency of the price out here. And this is just to give you a comparison. So in this aspect, India is cheaper than even the competition regionally, whether it's Singapore or Dubai. So we are going to be a fraction of the cost in terms of what is going to be traded out here. And there are a lot of facilities which are given for people to become members. In fact, as we speak, there are a couple of members from UAE, Emirates, who are also becoming a member in this exchange for them to access. So we have got 2 or 3 categories of membership in terms of trading, clearing, and you can have a combination of both as well. And the process is actually laid out here, which I think I won't go through. And in terms of net worth, we are talking about small and medium business. We talked about it throughout the day. So obviously people who want to come and set up business just need to put in about $150,000 of net worth, which is all the money which they need to actually set up the company. And in terms of the exchange fees, it's all minimal. It's in terms of US dollar 500 or $1,000. So effectively, the access to this particular market is very easy for all international players. So this is broadly the sum and substance of what we are trying to do. But in terms of the big impact, this is basically a clear announcement of India's intention to actually now become truly global and truly international. So no longer are we looking at ourselves inwardly as a purely closeted economy. And this is probably the first step where we are actually embracing and saying that let's take on the world. And in some sense, as a large major economy, which is growing at an amazing pace, I think the financial markets, which normally grow at double the pace of what the GDP is, this obviously is something which all of you should take a look at. And this is obviously a very interesting opportunity. And I'm sure we could look at a lot of collaboration with Sharjah also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balasubramaniam. That was very, very creative. The membership opportunities, the trust, the faith, the ease of getting involved, listed, trading, it seems very straightforward, and thank you for the impetus on that. Any questions to Mr. Balasubramaniam about the presentation? We have a few minutes before we do the general Q&A.
Do we have any questions?
I have one question to Mr. Bala. So new concept. Definitely, he was also mentioning that Sharjah can contribute, or INX can contribute to Sharjah by the way of supporting investors, not only investors, the companies. So can you please explain how to join hands to make the GDP growth from Sharjah for UAE?
So as I said today, for example, there are a lot of companies which come from different parts of the world, which actually go and do their IPOs in the big exchanges. So now in some sense, within the region, now IFSC or the India International Exchange will now be basically a global player for listing players, and definitely we are looking at targeting the Asia Pacific region to begin with. And in that sense, companies from UAE, also small medium enterprises from UAE, which wants to come and list in our exchange, will be enabled, and that will also help them in getting investors, which is our captive investor, which is a very large kind of a population. All of them could also invest in these companies. That's one. Secondly, we could also help, for example, in raising bonds. So if there are large infrastructure projects, so foreign issuers can also issue debt, which again can be listed on our market, which will give people liquidity and secondary market trading. And that again, we have a very large subscriber base, which could also subscribe to those particular bonds. So this way, from a financial closure perspective, we'll be able to help any country, any organization, any